Hello and welcome to another episode of Movies That Make Us. I'm Jake.
I'm Tracy.
And I'm Val.
And here we are. We're going to dive into Living. We talked about it on Saturday. I hope you guys saw that quick, short little episode, mini-sode. I don't know what to call it, but it was fun. And now we're going to dive into it. And before we get to that, though, Val, you have been all over Sundance. We've seen the pictures. We've seen the videos. How has it been this year, Sundance 2023? Because this was the first year kind of back at Sundance, right?
Yeah, because last year, like a week before we were scheduled to go, they canceled it because of COVID. We had another just flare up. I think it was from, everybody meeting each other for the holidays and then, all these people coming up with it. And I was a little upset because it was the first time I had press credentials like what I had. And then I found out like 2 days before Sundance started that I had COVID. So it ended up nobody got to go. So I had COVID watching it from my bed, doing interviews from this room. And it was actually a lot of fun, but then being able to go up on site, and I thought the lines were going to be a lot longer because when you're working press, you basically go to the press and industry screenings and you go get in line in the press line and they let you in 10 minutes before the movie starts if there's enough room. I got into everything I wanted to get into. The lines were not very long.
Awesome.
And there was only a few movies that I went to that the theaters were totally full. So I think a lot of people were doing a little bit of both online and in person. Plus, there was just so much to do to try and decide what to go to was really difficult. But I did get to go see, how much I love to see documentaries, and I'm actually still watching a few from home, plus the short programs, which I'm excited about.
Love those.
But I did get to see Still, the Michael J. Fox documentary, and I got to be on the press line for that. Now, the press line is not the line that we wait for tickets. It's the red carpet where you get to interview people.
Nice.
And so I did get to do that. He only interviewed with 2 people, really big outlets, because it's very hard for him to do interviews. But I did get to interview the director and the producer and I just lost the music person, the composer. And so I'll have those interviews up on my YouTube page, which I can put some links up so people can check those out.
Yeah, please do.
But that movie was an A for me. The director said it very well on the red carpet when we were chatting with him. The movie is not about what you think it's about, because if you say Michael J. Fox has a documentary, what do you automatically think it's going to be about? Parkinson's. And it's not about Parkinson's. It is about his life in the 80s and the 90s. It's about how he, quit high school and drove from Canada to LA to be an actor, and then was so poor he was eating jelly out of the little jelly packets because he didn't have enough money. And then how he just went flip to stardom. And so we all remember when we got to see him on TV. We grew up with him in our homes. We saw him in movies. And this is what you get to see what was happening during all of those times. And then, yes, Parkinson's, he got it at 29, and how he kept that a secret and what he did to keep that a secret for so long. And then how he's dealing with that now. But he has so much energy still as a person. And the documentary itself was so much fun to watch, but also just so enlightening to watch. That one was an A for me. So that one is going to be on Apple Plus.
Okay. That's what I was going to say. Apple TV. Yeah.
I thought I had heard that it was coming to Apple Plus.
It will probably have a short stint in theaters. And then it will be on Apple TV Plus. And then I did get to see the Brooke Shields documentary. And that, along with some other things that I kind of got to witness firsthand at Sundance that I'm not going to get into here, was so frustrating. She's such a great person, and just telling her story from her life and from that time and the things that she went through, and then having discussions with her girls who are now in high school and college, and them actually enlightening her about the things that happened to her and why they're not okay, because kids these days know way more than we ever knew, and at a younger age.
I've heard she is just like the nicest person ever.
Delightful. And it's so to see two people, Michael J. Fox, Brooke Shields, that we grew up with, and they're actually good people.
That's fantastic.
In Michael J. Fox's documentary, there were times where he was really young when he became really famous, and he's like, I was a jerk.
I'm sure. Yeah.
When he met his wife on set, she didn't care who he was, and she called him out on his crap. Like, it was great. Like, you definitely want to see both. Brooke Shields is a B+, not quite an A. But it's definitely, that's still great. That one's going to be on Hulu.
What? On Hulu.
What's that one called?
It's called Pretty Baby, which was named after the movie that is so controversial that she did. You don't have to see any of those movies for any of this to make sense to you. In fact, I wouldn't recommend that you see Pretty Baby because it's a little horrific to watch these days. Yeah. But they do show clips of it in the documentary, and she talks about it in detail, and they go into her relationship with her mother. There's one that's a horror suspense thriller called Birth, Rebirth. And that is an A for me.
You gave a horror film an A?
It's not a slasher horror, but you do see blood and anatomy because it's about doctors and science, and it's kind of a Frankenstein-esque movie.
I've heard it's a Frankenstein movie.
And it is 3 main cast are women, and two women, one little girl. They are absolutely phenomenally amazing. I did get to interview the main actress, and I can't think of her name right now, but that interview will also be up pretty soon. And I might just put them on both of ours, YouTube channels, if that's okay.
We have a spot on our YouTube channel just for Val's interviews. So if you do, I can get it in that playlist, and it's perfect.
But that one, I don't even want to get into what it is because I really want people to go and see it. It really is that question between science and what your line is for that threshold of how far do we go with science. And then you add in being a parent and how far would you go past where you're comfortable are to save your kid. And so there's a lot of intriguing things. So that one's an A. I don't know when that is going to be out, but I will make sure when it comes out that we discuss it in some manner, even just telling people it's out. And the other one I wanted to talk about, and it's the last one before we jump into living, is the Jonathan Majors movie, Magazine Dreams. And this one is also a B+ for me. So those are my 2 A's, 2 B+. The movie was a little bit long, or it would have been an A. There are times where it's a little messy, but this role for me, for him to choose a role like this, and I didn't see Jonathan Majors one time during the movie.
That's awesome.
I saw this character that he was playing, and I think it's one of the most important and powerful roles he has ever chosen. And he's still a really young guy, and I've been so impressed with the roles he has chosen so far in his career. And this year, we're lucky enough to get him in 3 movies. We get him at some point when Magazine Dreams come out. I'm sure it's going to get picked up, and it will be announced in the next couple of weeks because it did really well. And then in a couple of weeks, we get to see him in Quantum Mania. And then 3 weeks after that, we get to see him in Creed 3. And so he's just doing so well and taking advantage of the fact that he just kicked his butt to get the muscles that he has, because this movie is all about him wanting to be, he's a bodybuilder competitor, and he wants to be on the cover of a magazine, but for very specific reasons. And there's a lot of traumas that he's gone through. He's almost, I would say, he's like Sheldon a little bit, where he's awkward and he doesn't know how to interact with people, and he doesn't see past his own
issues, needs.
Well, when you go through trauma, sometimes you pick something and you focus all of your energy on that thing, and that's the only thing that matters because that keeps you going. And it kind of gets him into some situations. And so you're dealing with trauma, you're dealing with family, you're dealing with mental health issues. and anger issues, and then him being taken advantage of because he really just doesn't know. And he's just this big, huge guy. So you don't expect when you see someone like that, you know, they look like they're 25 or 30, but they're actually like maybe 13.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I read an interview where he was saying that he had to eat like 6,000 calories a day, and it was like pure protein. And he goes,
Yeah, they show him eating so much food.
He's like, it takes all the fun out of eating because you're just eating for eating's sake, and you just have to force yourself to do
Yeah,
it.
that's why my
It's a
brother
totally
doesn't
different
compete
approach.
anymore, because it's just so hard on your body mentally and physically
gosh.
to be a competitor.
I'm sure.
Yeah, that poster, man, he is ripped. But I got to say, I saw him recently in Devotion, the Korean fire pilot movie, and while the movie itself wasn't that great, he was incredible.
I felt the same about that one as well.
Yeah.
It wasn't one of my favorites that came out last year, but he did well, and so did his
was so
counterpart.
good.
I thought his
Yeah.
counterpart did.
guy
The
from
movie
Top
for
Gun
me, it
Maverick.
just fell short story wise.
Yeah.
I think he's got a bright future ahead of him. I think he's going to be around for a long time. Even if after this year we all hate him because he's going up against Paul Rudd and then Michael B. Jordan, and like he's the bad guy in both instances. But I'm convinced we're going to get an intriguing villain from him in both cases.
Yes.
And I think
I love
that'll
good villains.
be
Bring
for
it
so
on.
interesting. Yeah.
Multiple
Yeah,
villains.
absolutely.
He's going to play
Yeah.
multiple versions. Yeah.
That's correct. With Kang, he's going to be multiple versions of himself.
Super quick before we jump into living, I just have to give a shout out to Apple TV with their new series Shrinking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've heard good things.
Jason Segel and Harrison Ford. It's the best thing Ford has done in years. Jason Segel continues to amaze me because he's not just a comedic actor. It's from the same creators as Ted Lasso and Scrubs.
Mm-hmm.
It is heartfelt. It is funny. It is heartbreaking. It is just really good. And the first 2 episodes are out. So
yeah.
So it's everything you would expect from the creators of Scrubs.
Well, and I've been loving
Ted
him with
Lasso.
Helen Mirren being a cowboy. I didn't watch Yellowstone, but I've been watching the prequel of Yellowstone, and Dave and I are addicted, and they took it off air for 2 weeks so that this new show can come up. And we were so angry because we were so into it, but we're excited to watch Shrinking. We're actually going to watch it tonight. So
it's really,
awesome.
really good. Yeah.
Awesome.
And I don't listen, I'm just saying there may be a little bit of magic to having your show featured on Movies That Make Us. I'm just saying. We talked about Coda. It won Best Picture at the Academy Awards. Last week we talked about The Fire of Love. It got nominated for Best Documentary.
Right.
And today we're talking about Living. Bill Nighy gets nominated for Best Actor. So these films that Val just mentioned on our show, there may be good things in the future for them.
If he wins, he can call us and thank us.
Bill, we'd love to have you on the show, or Mr. Nine, but I'll be honest, after talking about Fire of Love last week and then seeing it get nominated, like I'm pulling for it because I really enjoyed that show, and it's a cute little movie, and that makes it sound demeaning. It's a really good movie. It's a cute show. I really liked it. So
yeah.
We are going to jump into Living, starring Bill Nighy. But before we do that, we would like to ask you to please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you have not yet. Go ahead and like this video and then leave a comment. Tell us your favorite indie movie that you've caught. And if you were up at Sundance, what was your favorite film that you saw at Sundance? Or what are you looking forward to coming out of the festival? So we'd love to hear that. So leave the comments below this video and subscribe to this channel and share it with your friends. So let's talk about Living. Bill Nighy. This movie is so good. I don't even know where to go except to say I just really enjoyed it. Bill Nighy is a delight from start to finish. Go ahead.
I was going to say, set it up for those that maybe haven't had a chance to see it yet.
Yeah, so Bill Nighy plays a character. He is a civil servant in the Public Works Department, I believe, for the county that he lives in England. What I didn't realize when we started watching it, it's kind of a period piece. I think it's 50s-ish. I don't know.
Yeah,
sometime.
I got that feel. Yeah.
Yeah, 30s, 40s, somewhere in that range. And he has been there lifelong in the same department doing the same work. And he gets, and I believe this is in the synopsis, so I'm not spoiling anything that wouldn't be in the synopsis if you were to pick it up at a movie store or something, but he gets diagnosed with a terminal illness. And how does that change his perspective on life? And he kind of starts deciding to live a little differently. And it's a powerful story. I mean, it's what you, with that premise, I think it's what you expect the movie to be in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if you haven't seen it and you don't want it spoiled, please come back and watch this movie or watch this episode after you've watched the film. It is in theaters right now, but I definitely recommend going to see it. But if you'd want to avoid spoilers, come back after you've seen it and watch this episode, because we would hate to spoil it for you if you are into that
And
kind
if
of
you're
thing.
not
If you don't care,
listening
then
in
stick
Utah,
around.
If you're not listening in Utah and you're one of the other amazing cities or countries that we're in the United States this weekend, it only opened up into 4 cities, and Salt Lake City was one of them. So make sure you go online and see if one of your cities was it, or if you can stream it somewhere. They had it open briefly, I think in November, just so it could be on the list for the Academy Awards. And then it opened up in 4 or 5 cities this last weekend, and Salt Lake City was one of them. Cool. And then I'm sure it'll do a broader release or streaming soon.
Yeah, usually we're towards the end of the release schedule, so that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
And it didn't get nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards, but Bill Nighy did get nominated for Best Actor, and I think that's well deserved.
I'm angry that it didn't, and that Triangle of Crap movie got nominated, because that movie is awful. I don't understand why it's there. And Living there could have been 10 other movies before that movie. So that's just my piece with Triangle of Sadness. Boo.
I tried to watch that and got about a half an hour in, and I'm like, I can't stand this.
That half hour felt like an hour and a half, didn't it?
It did. I haven't come back, and I don't want to. Yeah.
You're going to look at the cast and you're going to be like, I really should watch this movie. Don't. Right. The last 45 minutes of the movie is the best. The first 2 hours feels stupid.
So just skip it and watch this one instead.
Yeah.
When you saw this at Sundance, what was the reaction? Was there a big buzz about it? Was it kind of under the radar?
Well, so last year, again, it was really difficult because we were all watching from home. And before we even really hear about the movies as press, we have to choose the 25 movies that we want to watch that they're going to send us.
Do you at least get the synopsis?
Yeah, we get a brief little thing, but all I had to see was Bill Nighy and that it was a period piece. And I was like, I really want to watch this, because I usually try and pick movies that I don't think are going to be coming out very soon. Right. Whereas this year I saw some popular ones that I know are coming out. But last year, and I ended up watching 37 movies last year because I ended up getting to see more. Whereas this year I saw 7 in person, and I'm at 11 right now. It's just not as much. By the time I'm done with the shorts and stuff, it'll be more, but I don't know that there was a buzz, but like maybe a week or 2 after, people were like, this is very, charming. Like that's what I kept hearing about, is that's a very charming movie. And it was definitely a movie that came up when we were voting for our picks at the Utah Film Critic Association, and he came up as one of our Best Actor nominees. He didn't make it as our Best Actor, but it was a discussion that we definitely had. And so I just think it's one of those sleepers that's there's no explosions, there's nothing fancy schmancy. And so it's kind of like that Mark Rylance movie that came out last year, where he was a cutter, where it's a sleeper, and it's so good. Once people see it, they're like, how did we not know about this movie? This is one of those movies.
I agree. It is. I mean, there's nothing that's going to jump off the screen in the trailer or anything like that that's going to say, oh, you need to come see this, because it is completely story. It's completely the performances by the actors. But sometimes that's like when you start watching a movie, sometimes you start watching it and you just feel like this is different. The quality here is different. The story that I'm getting is different. And I really love that feeling sometimes. Like, this is just a different quality. It's just higher caliber. And that's how I felt watching this movie. I don't know how to put that into words any better than I just did. And I know I did a horrible job.
Yeah, no. And the Mark Rylance movie was The Outfit, which is streaming. And both him, Mark Rylance, and Bill Nighy, they both had sleeper movies last year that were fantastic. And they were both in my nominations for my Best Actor list, because they couldn't go up against kind of these bigger movies, bigger names, you know.
Right.
But they're both really, really good movies and really great performances.
Yeah, we spoke on the Saturday episode. You know, he got nominated for Best Actor. I think it's pretty clear that The Whale, Brendan Fraser.
Yeah, Brendan Fraser.
I don't know. I think Colin Farrell might steal it.
He might.
I think Colin might be the only one that could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they've been going back and forth at the award ceremonies.
Yeah.
With the wins.
Yeah. And I've heard The Whale is not that good of a movie, but that he's fantastic. But I just, it's hard because this one is so subtle and so quiet, and it's so good, but it doesn't have those big moments that you can be like that the Academy tends to love and focus on. And, you know, you can be like, Brendan Fraser brought all this pain, and, you know, and then he's in the prosthetics and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I don't know that you're necessarily going to get the support behind Bill Nighy's performance, which is
I
which
also
is too overlooked.
Yeah, I also tend to think, and I'm actually doing a panel about this at the Zion Film Festival in March, but how the Academy tends to vote with emotions more than they do vote for the person that deserves it that year. And that's why I know that this season we've seen you know, Steven Spielberg win Best Director and Best Picture, because this is the movie about his life, and it's a cinematic movie, but it's boring. And I don't think it was Best Picture. And
I didn't think it was that boring.
It was kind of boring for me. Out of everything that he's
and that's okay.
done, but he's going to win because they're voting with their emotions. It's the story of his life. So we respect him. So they're voting on that. And that's why I think if Brendan Fraser wins it, it's because we're so happy that he's back acting and that he chose such a, you know, a big role for himself that we haven't seen him do before. And so it's more about their personal than it is about technically what was on screen. So
and I haven't seen The Whale, so I don't know, and I don't want to, but
I have a copy,
you know,
of
Tracy,
it.
But you mentioned there aren't the big emotional moments necessarily with this, but I think from start to finish you get such a strong emotional performance, and I think there are some moments like when he's in the bar and he starts singing at the piano. That's a powerful, poignant moment. And even at the end, and they're both. First of all, I didn't know Bill Nighy could sing so well. He's got an angelic voice. Who knew? I didn't know that. But when he's
haven't you seen
on the
Love
swing,
Actually?
I've never actually seen that one.
He doesn't sing well.
Actually, I haven't. But
Nelson ended up with Jake and I are like,
when he's on the swing at the very end. And I mean, those are some powerful, but the way he plays his character and who this character is, it's very quiet, like you said, Tracy.
Yeah.
But we get that throughout the whole.
But you can't take those clips and just show them like on a talk show.
Right.
Right. You have to have had the full movie to get to those moments where it pays off.
Right.
It's not the Jack Nicholson speech in A Few Good Men, you know, where you can just take that section and just put it up there and say, this is what he did.
Yeah.
And I
it's
think
not
that's
the Oscar
why it didn't
clip
get a lot of push or play, because it's kind of like Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris. You see the poster of this movie and that movie, and you see a white British guy dressed in a stuffy outfit, and you're thinking, I've seen this movie and it's, you know, it's nothing original, but then you jump into it and there's so much depth. And like I said in our, you know, our short little teaser on Saturday, is that for me, it's a very romantic movie. It's not a love story romance, but the movie itself is so romantic in a way about life. that there are moments, those quiet moments that I do think are emotional, that I get emotional every time I watch them. Like just seeing his temperament change, like between train rides with people that he works with, and seeing his temperament, and just like, he's nervous to do certain things, like go out certain places and meet certain people, but then he's like, but what do I have to lose? And I think we've all been in those situations where we're like, I just need to say yes to this. I'm scared, but I just need to go. And I might be perceived as this, but it's not that. And I believe in the decisions that I'm making, and the arguments that he's having. A lot of people get stuck in a job that they don't believe in anymore. And then they get frustrated and they want to go beyond what they're being told and do what's right. And I thought those moments were really well done.
Yeah. When you talk about it being romantic, I feel like I watched it and I had the thought, this is a love letter to the English language, or at least an example of how I'm just doing English wrong. Because the way he talks, especially the conversation where he's having it with the young lady that he worked with, and that he kind of starts building this friendship with, that to him was never anything more than this friendship, because she made him feel alive. And as he's explaining all of this to her, and he's going in and he's talking about infatuation and things and on, like the way he talked about stuff, I'm like, we just don't do English right anymore. And it was just beautifully well written and well spoken. And I just thought throughout the dialogue was just fantastic for that reason.
So you're not a big fan of YOLO or sus or?
Oh my gosh.
I use them.
Well, send
English is, any language is an evolution, right? And it changes and it
we're
grows.
evolving in the wrong way a lot of times.
I feel like we're missing some beauty that has gone out of the language. The other thought. Oh, go ahead, Tracy.
Please, no. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, I'm going to take us off track in a weird direction. So go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to piggyback off of what Val said with the job, and it kind of reminded me of Terry Gilliam's Brazil, where he is just this government worker in this government bureaucracy. And the fact that they just fill out forms, and then they just send it off to the next department, and then it goes around the horn, and then it comes back and they go, well, nothing we can do. So it'll just sit here in this pile for the rest of its life. And, and so I'm like, that's gotta be so mind numbing of a job. And I could see why after a while, you just don't care anymore, because you're just part of the machine instead of being an active part of something important.
I loved that aspect of it, because we see at the very beginning, these three ladies that are coming in wanting this playground built. We don't know the whole story about them yet, but except that they keep coming in, and so they're taking turns on, figuring out who's going to offload them next and where it's got to go. And when it kind of comes back to them, and he takes it and he says, we'll just leave it here. What's no harm, and he puts it in the pile of a bunch of other papers where there's no harm for them to just stay there. And then as he comes back to work after having that conversation with the young lady, I can't remember her name now, the character's name, and he realizes what he needs to do. I wanted to be a gentleman when I grew up, and I wanted to do this, and realizing he wasn't really making a difference, but maybe he could. And so he comes back. And the way they told that part of the story, I love, because then it just goes to his funeral, and then we get it from the perspective of his fellow employees. We're like, them giving him credit, like he was the one that built the playground all by himself. And then they start relating the stories, and you realize, he kind of did. Sitting there waiting for him and then pushing back to Sir James and all these other things. And it was that moment when I realized this is basically the plot of the first few seasons of Parks and Rec.
How do you always bring us back to Parks and Rec?
I'm right there with you, Jake. I am right there with you.
Parks and Rec starts with somebody wants an old, rundown lot next to their house to become a park. Leslie decides, I'm going to push this through. I'm going to make this my mission. And she is determined to get that park built. And that is what the whole first few seasons
is going to stop her.
Yeah.
But is Bill Nighy in it?
No, he's not. He should have been. This is totally different quality, totally. But that was the thought that came in, and I was like, but I'm okay with that. It was just a different take
minds.
on it. And so, but this was much better than Parks and Recreation in a different, well, better. It's very different.
It's different. Yes.
Yeah. But I loved that perspective and how they told that story, because you see how much he had changed and said, you know, it's not just a stack of papers anymore, no harm.
Right.
And then when they end it with the guy, the young Mr. something, started with a W. Man, I should have anyway, but they end it with him after the new boss says, well, as long as I'm at Public Works, we'll never let something get passed again, and we'll take it up and whatever. And then they do, and he says, oh, we'll leave it here, no harm.
Mm-hmm.
And he realizes, you know, he's got that letter from him saying, you know, don't do that. And I don't know, it was just powerful. Like, he's trying to save him from becoming him. Like, you don't
Right.
want to be Mr. Zombie. You're young enough. You can push this through. You can do better than I did. Don't become. I loved it when she shared that nickname. I called you
was so
Mr.
great.
Zombie. And he was like,
She was charming.
she
I
was
don't know.
really good.
I haven't seen her in anything, but I'm curious to see where she goes with her career, because she was really, really good.
Yeah, she was fantastic. A lot of the performances were really solid. I mean, Bill
Yeah,
Nighy,
across the
obviously,
board.
but throughout. Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting too, because I'm on the downhill side to 50. And I said
Okay.
that at work the other day, and my coworker was like, "You don't act like you're almost 50." I'm like, "Thank you."
Yeah.
But it's like you look back and you're like, "Am I doing what I need to be doing?" You really assess that part of, that aspect of your life. And that really stuck with me, because I've been dealing with that and going through that. So yeah.
Yeah. I think we all
He
kind of
was
hit that
in
point.
the Electrical Life of Louis Wayne with Benedict Cumberbatch.
I didn't see that one.
That's also was a good sleeper of a movie. Not as good as this one, but good.
Yeah. So, yeah, this one's good. When you have the opportunity to see it, you should definitely do it if you haven't seen it already. And even if you have, watch it again. It's a good reminder. You know, I came out of it thinking the same thing, Tracy. Where am I at in my life, and what do I want to be different, and what's holding me back from
Right.
doing the things that I want to do? And in most cases, as I thought about it, it was me that was holding myself back. And
Yeah. Yep.
you kind of just fall into a routine of things, and before you know
Get
it,
comfortable and you just get used to it. Yeah.
Well, and what are the
yeah,
bad habits that you've picked up from the world around you? And I think that's a lot of what, I felt like I was in some places in radio, because a year ago, this last week, I lost my job in radio, and I haven't missed it at all. But I think when you work with a group of people for as long as he worked, and some of us work, that you all kind of start turning into one person. So if one person says it's okay for something to be done this way, it's just how it's done, and nobody questions it. And then you stop and look like, well, is that really the right thing to do? Who even said, and so you get comfortable, and you get in this just like monotony of you show up, you do these things, you do these things, you go home, you show up, you do these things, you do these things and go home. And when you step back from your life, you could probably be doing more. You just haven't asked. You just haven't brought it up. You just haven't tried. And so the job that you think is monotonous and boring and you hate it and you want to get out of it could probably be better if you looked at it in a different way. And I think that's our lives as well. If we look at our lives in a different way, who says you can't do these things? Well, I mean, nobody has done them. Okay, well, somebody has to do it to start it, So
this is just how we've always done it. That's my favorite thing. Where I work, that comes up a lot. Well, why do we do it this way? Well, that's just how we've always done it. Well, that's a really lame reason to do anything. Yeah. Let's look at what we're doing and how we can do it different. And I just love that idea of before it's too late. Like, I don't want to be Williams, I think his name, Mr. Williams. I want to be the young guy where before I hit that point, I can turn things around now and say, I want to make a difference and be better. And And I'm fortunate because, you know, I have a great team at work for sure, but I'm also fortunate because I've got my family and then my tribe outside of that, including you guys, people that I can work with that, you know, we can move things forward. We can do some amazing things. And I feel like I don't have anybody that's like, no, just leave it here. What harm? Just leave it. And we'll just keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
I actually saw some of those things at Sundance, and I asked some people on the press line, like, why is stuff like this still tolerated? And they're like, oh, this is just how it always is. And I'm like, but it shouldn't be this way. And they're like, yeah, we know, but nobody wants to ruffle the feathers as afraid that they're not going to be asked back. But guess what? Guess who's going to come in and ruffle some feathers? This may be the first and last year that I get to do a press line. But I saw some behavior that was not okay. And that surprised me that this day and age we were still doing. And I think a lot of it, like I thought about this movie, and it's just like, what a good time to really take a look at your life instead of at the end of the year, at the beginning of the year, is like sit back and look at what you're doing. And when you wake up in the morning, is everything that you're doing today getting you to where you want to be? Do you know where you want to be? It's okay if you don't know where you want to go, but you know, even when I don't know where I want to go and what I want to be doing, is what I'm doing right now okay? Like the things that I'm doing right now better be good, better make me happy, because I'm spending time away from the people that I care about to do it.
Because there's a difference between living and existing.
Yeah.
Yep.
And when you live your best life, your bird deck beats the zombie deck. And
congrats on that, by the way, Val. That was huge.
It'll never happen again, but I just needed it to happen one time.
That's all you need.
The secret of life, right? You don't need to do it all the time, but you got to do it at least once.
It was possible. It was nail biting. It was Die Hard. We were hanging off the edge of the building.
I lived off of that for a long time after the 2009 Sugar Bowl when Utah beat Alabama. I know 9 times out of 10, Alabama's going to beat Utah in football. I just needed that one time to be the Sugar Bowl, and I'm good. And it was awesome. So,
I don't know what all happened in the press line. We haven't discussed, Val, but I am proud of you for saying this is not the way that this is supposed to be.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I'll be doing a live episode on it either tonight or tomorrow on my What to See with Val and Seemingly Appropriate page dually, because it goes on both. And it's going to be one of the first times, maybe the first time, that I'm going to do my podcast by myself. So come and join me. I'll put it up in advance so that people know when it's going to happen, but come and join me and have a conversation with me. Or I'll just be talking to myself, but
well, I hope that things get better. I hope whatever behaviors you saw get better, and maybe they won't. I know I posted an article, and this isn't Sundance's fault. This is the films and the production's fault about captioning. And Marlee Matlin was one of the judges, for the awards for Sundance Film Festival. And one of the movies that they tried to go to, they couldn't because
they got up and walked out.
Yeah. The judges all walked out.
Yeah.
And it was because the captioning device didn't work, because that was the only option they had, because there wasn't a caption print of the film. And finding out, as they dug into it, a lot of these a lot of these films don't do a caption version because that's another print that they have to run, and it costs more money. And listen, we are at a point with technology in this day and age where that should not be a prohibitive thing.
100%.
Like that should be available and easily accessible. And I get it. Indie filmmakers with a lot smaller budget and all of that, I understand. And I don't want anybody to break the bank, but it shouldn't cost that much more.
But if you're
breaking the bank,
if you're showing at Sundance, you should be able to, or somebody should be able to help you get that.
Well,
we should not have it.
Yeah, I was in probably 80% of the movies that I was in had closed captioning from the beginning, had subtitles. Awesome. Because you have people from all over the world, not just people with hearing impairments of all different levels and hearing loss, but you also have people from all over the world that speak all these different languages that are coming to these movies. And I only watched a couple of foreign films, but even the films that weren't foreign had captioning in most of them, and a lot of the panels that I went had ASL interpreters,
Which is
and
awesome.
so I was very happy to see those things. And then when I read about this the day that it happened, it was going all over Sundance.
I'm sure.
Got up and walked out. It was the same thing that I saw in the press line, is that this day and age, with all the movies that we saw last year, with all the movies that are coming, that are highlighting the fact that we need this, and the fact that their best picture that came out of there, it's crazy that we have to remind people to do these things. But I think that, and it isn't Sundance's fault on the thing I'm going to talk about either. But I do think when you run something like this, it is the responsibility to say, when people enter films into the festival, that there should be things that are requirements for screenings, totally, and that should be one of them.
Yeah, I agree. So, but let's not leave it on a sour note.
Yeah.
Well, we got your grade for Living on Saturday. You've released that before. It was an A. Tracy, what's your grade for this movie?
This was a real nice little film. I'm excited to see it on a bigger screen. I had to watch it as a screener on the laptop. I'd like to see it a little bit bigger. It doesn't have like all the flash and bang of like Top Gun Maverick. It was like, you have to see this on the big screen. Avatar, you got to see this on the big screen. This is one that you can watch at home comfortably, but I still would recommend you see it in the theater, because the more we can support these types of films, the more they're going to make them. As Jake said, right now, it's just like so much superhero stuff, and which is great. I love that genre. It's a lot of fun. But there is room for other stuff out there. So, go check this out if you're in Salt Lake or one of the 4 cities currently showing. If not, catch it when it's streaming. It is a beautiful little film. Tremendous performances across the board. It's a little bit slow for me in parts, which is the only thing that's kind of dragging my grade down a little. I'm going to go A- on this one.
Yeah. I agree with everything you said, Tracy. We want to see these movies succeed. We want people to go see them, because we want these kinds of stories to continue to be told. I'm as big a nerd as anybody when it comes to the superhero stuff or the Star Wars stuff or whatever. But like I said, you sit down and watch this movie and it just feels different in a very positive way to me. Like, it just feels like you're experiencing something different, and you're experiencing different emotions on a different level. Bill Nighy's amazing, fantastic. I hope he gets everything great, because that's what he deserves. The story is fantastic. I'm going for an A. I get what you're saying, Tracy, with the slowness, but it wasn't enough to hinder me with the grade. I feel like Bill Nighy just pulls it up enough for me.
It's so minute, but that's where I ended.
But I also am not going to squabble with you over an A- opposed to an A, because that's still a solid grade. This isn't one of those times where Tracy's like, I'm going to bring it down a little bit to a C+ or something. No, so we'll count this as AAA rated.
It's still in the A range.
Yep, you need to see this movie. However it's available to you, it's a fantastic film. So there you go. That wraps up our January. We picked a lot of feel-good movies to help you get through the month. It is finally 5 years later, almost over. But that is bringing us into February. We are doing something special in February, 00 February. I think we're going with the Daniel Craig James Bond films. Is that the plan? So we're going to start with Casino Royale.
Nice.
And get through those films and share those with you. Also, we're going to talk about Quantumania at some point. We're at least going to put up an MTMU reviews episode where you can get our reaction and review to it, spoiler free. You guys will want to stay tuned for all of that kind of stuff. It's a big year for movies. Creed 3 is going to be the next big one that comes out after Quantumania, and I cannot wait. Yeah. Can't wait for Creed 3.
And GoldenEye is available on the Switch and the Xbox now. The old
GoldenEye
Nintendo 64 game.
There you go. So that it's a perfect time to talk about the James Bond movies. See,
There's
we
never a
appreciate
bad time.
there's never a bad time, but we appreciate the makers of GoldenEye and Xbox and Switch for coordinating that with our 00 February for next month. These companies really help us out when they do that. So, in the meantime, make sure you subscribe to our channel here on YouTube. Make sure that you also follow us wherever you listen to podcasts so that you never miss a new episode. We appreciate your support so much. And until next time, we won't see you at the movies.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
This has been an Age of Geek media production.